All right, we're going to promote her there real fast. Should we come back up? There she is. Unmute her.
Hello.
Hey, good morning, Lauren.
Good morning. How are you?
We are doing well. We're running on third cup of coffee, fourth cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I've had 2 already, so hopefully I'm ready to go with the energy.
Yeah, definitely. We'll try to keep the energy rock and roll in here, but we're excited to have you on here and have you share what you're going to share with us here. So before you get diving into your content, why don't you share a little bit of who you are for those that are watching, because we got people all across the United States and the globe actually tuning in this morning.
Sure, and that's great. I'm really happy to have people around the world, especially because I'm competing with the France-Argentina game. So special thanks to people who are tuning into this and not the World Cup. I'll try to keep it as successfct as possible so people
they don't matter.
Oh, geez. I'm just joking. So
Yeah.
Here.
That's right.
We're gonna find out where we're streaming at.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. Well, so my name's Lauren Maffeo. I work as a senior content analyst at GetApp, which is basically TripAdvisor for B2B software. We are owned by Gartner, which is a global IT research firm, and I am a senior content analyst for them, which means that I cover emerging tech trends like blockchain and AI and how small and mid-sized business owners incorporate them into their businesses. Prior to that, I worked as a content specialist for a Silicon Valley-based SaaS startup that focused on product management software. And I started my career as a freelance technology journalist based in London, covering tech trends for online news sites like The Guardian and The Next Web. So I've used social media throughout my career, and I especially used it last year as an advisor for Women's Startup Challenge, which is a DC-based initiative I'll talk about during my presentation, which aims to partner with the Craig Newmark Foundation and give venture capital to women-led startups, meaning startups that have at least one woman on their founding team.
Nice, good stuff. That's quite a resume there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. That was awesome.
Yeah. Do you have a PowerPoint you want to use or run off of, or just go back?
I do not. No, I'm happy to go back and forth. Yeah, I have to admit I'm not a big PowerPoint person. So
No, that's completely fine. We think that's some of the best content is going back and forth. And stuff like that. So we've got your title here, The New Girls Club, How Social Media Creates New Networks for Women in Tech. And Christy is walking in here in just a second too. So I know she's excited to hear what you got to say as well. So tell us a little about what you talk about.
Sure. So I'm honored to be part of Social Media Day to discuss this topic, because for all of its faults and negative press, excuse me, I can't really imagine a world without social media, and there are a lot of reasons for this. The first is that I'm a former expat. I live in the Washington, D.C. metro area now, but I lived in London for 2 years, and so as a result, I have friends all over the world, and without sites like Instagram and Facebook and the subsequent messaging apps, we would have far fewer tools to stay connected across time zones. The second reason is that I work in digital media. So as a senior content analyst, I am constantly publishing content on the web, specifically our media-owned properties, but putting it on our site isn't enough. And so I'm on social media all day using websites like Twitter and LinkedIn as outlets to share my work with our target audience. And the third reason I can't imagine a world without social media is because it has had a huge impact on my career. And that's really what I want to speak about today in the context of networks. Because by joining a few highly curated social media groups, I've learned about and been able to speak at 3 conferences within the last 3 months. I also have helped collect over 200 applications to the continent of Europe's largest venture capital competition for women-led startups.
Nice.
And I've realized that in a world where women still unfortunately endure abuse online just for daring to exist there, having these groups on social media are more than places to merely congregate. They play crucial roles connecting digital sponsors to proteges whom they can elevate. So to show what I mean, I'll back it up to last year. I was serving as an advisor to Women Startup Challenge, which is a DC-based initiative that partners with the Craig Newmark Foundation to host VC competitions for women-led startups. At that point, they had hosted several competitions in the US in cities like New York and San Francisco, and they were looking to expand to Europe for the first time. And given that I started my career in London's digital and technology sector, I was brought on as their advisor to help form judging panels and help get applicants and do a variety of other things, including promoting the event on social media. And as I mentioned, part of my role as an advisor was to find applicants, which meant that I needed to let startups with at least one woman on the founding team know that this competition existed and that they could apply to pitch the judges and then perhaps win up to £50,000 to fund their startup ventures. So to do that, I went online and joined more social media groups than I can count that were aimed at founders and people in tech around Europe in various countries. And that strategy worked really well because we got over 200 applications for the Europe Venture Capital competition, in large part because we spread the word across groups on Facebook and LinkedIn that it was happening and that the competition offered more VC funding to women-led startups in Europe than any other competition that we know of. But something else that was unexpected happened. I didn't leave those groups when the competition was done. I stayed a member of them. And earlier this year, I noticed that one particular group called Global Tech Women was a great source of organic networking. As the name suggests, Global Tech Women is a Facebook group where women around the world who work in various technology roles can meet each other. And it doesn't matter which position you hold, whether you're in marketing or a technical role as a full stack developer, it really is a place for people in the sector to congregate. But the group actually is more than that. Women use it to help others get ahead. And that points to a very particular goal beyond simply existing on social media as a user. I checked the group's page earlier this morning before I joined this webinar, and I found, among other things, a free training session for how to get a raise, an announcement for the dates of South Africa's largest hackathon, and details about an online summer camp for 9 to 13-year-old girls who are interested in coding. And those are just posts that I found in the group this morning. And on a personal level, I have found Global Tech Women to be a hugely beneficial group. Simply by being a member, I've learned about speaking opportunities at a range of conferences because people who are organizing conferences and want diverse speakers will seek these groups out in order to get qualified speakers for their events. Within the last 3 months, I've served as a speaker at Women Tech Makers Montreal in Canada, the Moms Can Code Virtual Summit, which is a global virtual summit aimed at helping moms get their first jobs in technical roles. And earlier this month in June, I spoke at the Women in Technology International Summit in Silicon Valley. And without being a member of Global Tech Women on Facebook, I would have missed the calls for speakers to all 3 of these conferences because the organizers were intentional about using social media to find the diverse speaker pools that they needed. And they knew that they could count on Global Tech Women to be a digital space where they would find qualified candidates. And I also subsequently realized that by being part of the community, I could grow my career by seeking opportunities. And I could also contribute to the group by sharing those opportunities on my end with others, like I did with Women Startup Challenge. And I've seen success on other social channels beyond Facebook with this. Last month, an MBA student at London Business School reached out to say that he was building a mentorship program within his cohort for women who want to pursue careers in tech. He had come across my Twitter profile and asked if I would like to get involved with the program as a mentor based on my career and also content that I had posted. The program itself is still a work in progress, but I think it's another example of how having a social media presence that's relevant to a unique audience will ultimately help you stand out to the right people. it's important to mention that this didn't happen overnight. And so I don't want to mislead anybody into thinking that just because you join these groups, you're automatically going to have all of these opportunities come your way. I was on Twitter posting content for 8 years before I got that ask. And I was a member of the Global Tech Women Facebook group for 1 year before conference season hit. And I suddenly saw all of these calls for speakers. I'm sure anybody else who speaks at events knows that they tend to be very seasonal. And so you'll have dry periods where there's not a lot going on. And then all of a sudden you'll get bombarded with a lot of different things at once. And so the point is to join the groups that are highly relevant to you, and then be patient and strategic about what you apply for and when. And like I mentioned, it literally took years of posting relevant content and building a presence on these platforms for me to see the fruits of my labor. But that's also exactly why having a voice and a presence on social media matters, because these platforms allow you to share your knowledge and grow over time. And most importantly, they help like-minded women connect with each other, and they connect people that would not otherwise be able to meet. And it's interesting to me that I was asked to serve as a mentor for women in tech over social media. I'm honored to be asked, and I hope I'll be able to shape this program, having been asked to join at such an early stage. But I do have to say that I'm getting to a point where I dislike the word mentor in itself, because I think it's squishy and I think it's gendered. And what I mean by that is, I'm willing to bet any woman listening to this talk has been told at some point, either directly or indirectly, that she needs a mentor if she wants to succeed. And I'm also willing to bet that many women listening to this talk have been asked to be a mentor at some point. And mentors do have their place. They exist to give honest, insightful advice that mentees won't gain from school, interviews, or other traditional paths. On top of that, you can't be what you can't see. And so I think there's a case to be made that there's inherent value in having a mentor who can look like you and share the steps they took to get where they are, especially if they hold a position like being a VP of marketing that you hope to have in the future. But the problem is mentors won't help you get ahead in your career. Not really. Research from Stanford shows that women are assigned more mentors than men, yet 15% more men won promotions. And that's what I mean by saying I think the conversation around mentors is gendered, because I don't think we're having the same conversation with men. I think men get a different message, which is that mentors don't really make an impact on whether you'll get promoted, but having a sponsor does make an impact. So what's the difference between a mentor and a sponsor then? The difference is that mentors advise you and sponsors advocate for you. And as social media grows more crowded every day, the value of small curated sub-networks is only going to grow. I think that's why we're seeing such a rise in Slack channels that go beyond internal communications, because those channels, for example, the DC Tech channel that I'm a part of, serve as that curated space for people to find each other. And I think if social media is going to compete, they need to really take a key role in nurturing those more small curated subnetworks on their own platforms, because they will continue to play a key role connecting women with sponsors whom they've never met. But even though women can use these groups to meet other women whom they've never met, they can still meet people who will advocate for them to the right senior leadership. So here's one example of that. 2 months ago, an expert on the Internet of Things posted in the Global Tech Women group that she teaches a course on autonomous vehicles at Stanford Continuing Studies. Her name's Sudha, and she went on to say that every time she teaches this course, she always has a small number of female students. She also shared in this post that she was actively looking to change this, and she thus wanted to share the course details with Global Tech Women in case group members either wanted to take the course or serve as guest lecturers so students could see women role models. She went on to say that she was also looking for panelists to speak about the subject of autonomous vehicles at the Women in Technology International Summit in Silicon Valley. And since I had both reported on this subject when I was doing freelance reporting and studied it as part of my coursework at MIT Sloan, I followed up after seeing that post with Sudha, and I ended up speaking on that panel along with another panel at the Women in Technology International Summit. Now that's an interesting case story because I had never met Suda before. She had never met me, but after connecting first on Facebook, then following up via email, then having a phone call, she really served as my sponsor for the Women in Technology International Summit. After I explained to her why I believed I was qualified to speak on her panel, she literally advocated for me to senior leadership. She made an e-intro to the conference organizer, shared my qualifications for speaking on the panel, and made a case for why I should join the event. Again, we had never met and we had only had one phone conversation prior to that e-intro, but that didn't matter for the relationship to be beneficial. We both had specific needs in that case, and we used social media to fulfill them. And without being mutual members of the same Facebook group, we wouldn't have found each other, and that sponsorship relationship could not have happened. And I love this case story also because I think it shows the main goal and the main value of social media, because we all know that for its benefits, social media has a lot of downsides as well. At best, it's a time suck that keeps you away from other things you could do, like sleeping. I have a really bad habit of scrolling Instagram before I go to sleep, and before I know it, 40 to 60 minutes have gone by. And at its worst, social media can actually have an adverse effect on mental health. We spend more time looking at others' content than adding content to our own communities. And research shows that when we do this, it negatively impacts our happiness. It shows that we're existing on social without clear goals in mind, and that can lead to a downward spiral. I think the main value of social media is to unite people with shared goals so that they can connect in real life. And that's exactly what happened with Suda's unofficial sponsorship of me. Because despite not knowing her name 12 weeks ago, we forged a quick connection when we both needed one, and we quickly sprang into action, which resulted in a cross-country meeting. And along with serving as spaces to find sponsors, social media groups dispel the myth that qualified women in tech don't exist. Earlier this year, the Consumer Electronics Show got a wave of negative press because they didn't have a single woman give a keynote address at their event for the second year in a row.
Wow.
If for no other reason, they should really know by now that this is really bad PR. In fact, this is another place where social media really plays a key role in sharing information, because once word got out about this, the hashtag CESSoMale started trending on Twitter, and the chief marketing officer of JP Morgan Chase used social media to share her curated list of qualified women, which she said it took her less time to create than it took to drink coffee. And so business leaders joined this.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and other business leaders joined this social media crusade. The global chief marketing officer at HP, who happens to be male, used Twitter to say that all men should boycott the conference if women aren't allowed to speak. So social media really played a key role as a platform where people not only shared that CES didn't have women speakers, but also shared the dispelled myth that there are not qualified women to speak at events like that. In spite of all this, the organizers went even further than to not issue a mea culpa. They actually claimed that there were, quote, no qualified women to give keynotes at the conference. And so they used the pipeline problem excuse that many of us in tech are familiar with, which is the argument that there just aren't enough qualified women and there aren't as many qualified women to do this type of speaking work as men. And when social media groups like Global Tech Women exist, they visibly dispel that myth. They serve as spaces where specific groups of people unite online to share opportunities with each other. And they send a message to the world that there are qualified women to give keynotes, lectures, advice, and anything else. They prove that women in tech do exist. They excel at their work. They're hungry for more, and they're going to use spaces on social media to get ahead. And these groups of women in tech on social across all platforms serve dual purposes. They provide visibility for women externally and sponsorship for women internally. And as the conversation about diversity and inclusion evolves, I think we're going to see social media platforms continue to play a really key role by going more narrow and helping serve as a space to connect women with digital sponsors and grow their careers.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
That's incredible.
Well, it's a good thing to see other people come, policing such an organization.
Yes.
People come into the, not saying that anybody needs rescue, but coming to the rescue, coming to the defense is a better way to put it, right?
Yeah.
Coming to the defense of that, because that's so true. I mean, it's in today's society, you're still, that's the thing, that there's still a glass ceiling that kind of exists a little bit. Would you agree to that, Sam?
I think there absolutely is, and it gets worse the more senior. It's a double-edged sword because it gets worse the more successful you get. I mean, even in the early stages of one's career, we're at a point now where women get more bachelor's degrees than men, and of course that varies by the subject that you study. But by and large, women are doing exceptionally well in education. And so oftentimes in the workforce, that can translate into gender equity in many early roles, if not having women outpace men in terms of the number of them. But then you really start to see the gaps the more senior you get. And I think especially when you're trying to get from those mid-level roles to those senior roles, that's a big ceiling for a lot of women. I know that isn't discussed very much. It's hard enough to make it to the C-suite, but another equally difficult challenge is trying to get from that mid-level position to that director or principal position. And so the conversation about the glass ceiling absolutely still exists. And it's very difficult to find the resources still that are going to help you crack it, which again, I think is a reason why networks on social are so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I definitely see how it makes up helping people, especially like you discussed about mentorship. It works more so to group, but like you said, lack of high-level women in those positions, it's hard to really have a true mentor when they aren't the same sex, aren't going through the exact same things, the biases that we all have across, multitude of facets in our lives. Whether it's raising a family or working your way to the top, or a mixture of balancing both as well. Unfortunately, guys have always been given to say, hey, work hard, work hard, work hard. That comes first a lot of times. And, that's not always the case. It should be, right?
Exactly. And I will say, though, that I absolutely think men can and should be both mentors and sponsors to women. So it's not to say that women should only mentor and sponsor women. That actually isn't going to work as a strategy, unfortunately, because we just don't have enough women in senior roles. And so we absolutely need male allies. But you're playing your part in this, because the fact that you chose a session on this subject at this conference, that is an example of being an ally, because you're giving a platform to someone who wants to discuss the topic. And so I do think that's an important distinction to make, is that even though it's very important to have these spaces where women can unofficially serve as sponsors for other women and help elevate them, I absolutely think men who share that goal can and should join those groups as well. Even though the shared goal is to elevate women, I don't necessarily believe that they should be exclusive to women.
Right. As you were talking, you were mentioning, these conferences, right? They're really male dominated. There's not one female that's going to be speaking, and not even just a keynote, just someone who's going to be speaking on a topic. And my wife here, Christy, I've seen her call out one organizer after the other, being like, well, where's the women? Where's the women? Why don't you have a female? And the same thing, well, we couldn't find one, and she's able to, like, no, bam, bam, bam. This lady would do it, this would do it, she would do it. She's influential, like she does all these amazing things. And it's incredible, because it's almost like they just like look around the room and go, nope, no women. I guess it's just us, instead of saying, hey, let's actually go out there and find these people, like what you're talking about. You get in these communities, get in these groups, get involved.
Right. I mean, the thought that people are going to try to colonize Mars, but they can't find any women to speak at tech conferences is just ridiculous. Like, it just doesn't even,
Is that the whole thing, make sense. From Mars, we're from Venus?
I guess so. But it talks about priorities, because that's the thing, is like, this actually isn't that hard of a problem to solve, in large part because social media groups like global tech women and women who code exist online. And so if you truly wanted to find diverse speakers, really all you have to do is go to social media and put calls out on these very targeted platforms, because they are communities of people that you could pull from. And so they serve, again, as a visible reminder that these people do exist. And that's it. It's interesting too, talking about tech events, because we're at a point now where there are a lot of women in tech events. And again, I think they serve a very important function, especially as a way to help women in tech share their knowledge and expertise. And that's really important. But it's interesting because you can be lulled into a false sense of security at these events, because you meet so many fantastic women who are so smart and qualified, and you can very easily be fooled into thinking that there's not a problem until you go to a more mainstream event. And it really hits home why these women in tech events exist in the first place. It's because the lack of diversity across all facets, gender, race, etc. You go to a mainstream event and it can still often be very monolithic. And that's something I'm conscious of as well. I mean, as much as I love seeing calls for speakers to women in tech events, I would really like to see conference organizers sharing of calls for diverse speakers to mainstream tech events as well, because that is just as important, if not more so in some ways.
I agree.
Yeah.
You know, it's about not just about being inclusive and getting women on the stage, but it's also like, if you really wanted to provide perspective to somebody about everything, then you would want a diverse set of people. I say people, not just women.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't, and that's what I'm sitting here like, Elijah knows, I just called them out on it. I'm like, you're having an empowering women event and there's not a single woman speaking.
Oh, yeah, you did have that event.
It happens.
She called me pissed off about it too. Yeah.
It still happens. Yeah. I mean, believe it or not, there will be D&I panels that are exclusively comprised of men, and they're not racially diverse. And so that is still a problem. But I think the tide is very slowly turning, and they're using social media again as a tool to share that. And so even large companies, as Christy said, we're seeing conferences that don't have diverse speakers, they will be called out on it publicly. And I know from experience that companies pay very close attention to what consumers and audiences say about them on social. And so if they notice a lot of tweets, for example, during an event about lack of diversity, we're at a point in the culture now where business leaders know that this is something their consumers care about, and they are going to take action. And sometimes that is what it takes. We do live in a capitalist society, and businesses do exist to make money. And if leaders know that the consumers care about this issue, they will be called to action, because it starts with what their consumers demand. And as that grows, it's going to increase, I think. It probably not as quickly as we would like it to, but all of that is to say, if someone watching this is ever at an event where they do think it's too monolithic, gently call them out on it on Twitter and on social media, because that is something, again, that the conference organizers and businesses are taking note of. They're doing a lot of social listening to see what consumers say about them publicly, because brand reputation is negatively impacted by that.
Right. Thank God for the community building that's taking place on social media, though.
Yes.
That's a strong point, and obviously a strong resource, and an ever-growing important thing that we've got to see on social media, and see those groups thrive to help get the message out, get the word out, provide opportunities, networking, you name it, as opportunities across the board, right?
Exactly. And it's an opportunity for social media organizations to really refine their algorithms to further direct people to those highly targeted groups. So that's an opportunity for the technical teams at these companies like Facebook and Twitter to figure out how they can direct users to the groups that are most relevant to their goals. And I think, again, we're going to see social media go more narrow in the future, because we're at a point where we're so satiated with content that the next frontier is really figuring out how to make it relevant.
Yeah, so the whole point, instead of going wider and wider, going deeper, narrowing it down and doing a deep dive down and really finding your niche, what you're looking for more so than anything else.
Exactly. And these platforms have a huge advantage in the fact that they have the numbers. I mean, everyone and their mom is quite literally on Facebook these days. And so they don't have to do the legwork of building the community because the community is already on Facebook. And that is, I think, more than half the battle. So then the question becomes, how do we unite all of these people?
Wow. I'm so glad I got back in enough time to hear this.
I am too.
I'm over here screaming girl power behind the camera. But
so for those that are watching, we got quite a few women watching. We got quite a few men watching. What are some of the questions you have for Lauren this morning here on National Social Media Day? We've got a few comments out here. Melanie says, "Hey, bravo for supportive women in notes," because that's kind of our niche. Got 70 heart. Give a couple hearts out there for you. Yeah, we're doing a deep dive this morning, Melanie. That goes back there for you. Great, good stuff there. What would you say? What hurdle would you say? Let's start with the other one. What hurdle do you say that you're still seeing out there, but it's fading away?
The big hurdle I see is that these groups do tend to share information about how women can grow their careers in very tangible ways, like speaking at conferences and getting that visibility, but they do tend to be gender-specific opportunities rather than opportunities that are more mainstream. That's not always the case. So as an example, I'm also a member of the Moms Can Code Facebook group, which is that online community of moms who are learning different languages so that they can get their first technical roles. And there was a call for speakers recently posted for a developer conference that is non-gender specific, and that they were specifically posting that in the group so that they could get more diverse speakers. The conference would pay for all of their flights and travel. And so those sorts of opportunities are more rare in these communities. Again, I think the opportunities are great, but they are often too gender specific. But I am starting to slowly see that change in the sense that I'm starting to see more calls and opportunities to be part of mainstream events come into those groups as well.
Good stuff.
Yeah,
Very
good
good
stuff.
stuff.
That's really cool.
How do people get a hold of you, Lauren?
So they can reach me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm on there under Lauren Maffeo, my full name, at Lauren Maffeo. And I'm also on LinkedIn, obviously, under my real name as well. So if people want to connect and follow up there, I'm happy to do that.
You don't have a fake name on LinkedIn, do you?
I do not. I give that disclaimer because I've run into many a fake account on LinkedIn, as I'm sure others have as well. So yeah, I'm on there under my name and happy to connect with anybody watching if they want to.
Awesome.
That's great.
Good stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for spreading the word.
Thanks for having me.
Definitely so much. Great stuff, Lauren. Well, hey, we'll let you get back to your Saturday morning. Thanks for being a big part of National Social Media Day. I guarantee we'll have a lot of people because we've got phases to this. This isn't just a live stream. We've got the videos that will be rolling out on YouTube, and then also taking each episode and turning its own podcast as well to help get the word out for everybody. So I think you'll be getting quite a few responses because we've got a pretty gender neutral crowd. Usually it's 50-50 men and women for the most part, which is great.
That's fantastic. I think that, in my opinion, that's always the goal. Like when I speak on a panel or go to an event, in my opinion, get the most value out of those opportunities when they are as gender neutral as possible. And so I think the fact that you have a 50-50 audience is fantastic. And it's huge progress compared to a lot of other events.
I would agree to that. I think we've all seen it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, hey, enjoy your Saturday. Thanks again for joining us here, and we'll see you around. All righty?
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
Thank
Lauren.
you.
Thanks, Lauren. That was really cool.
That was great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Man, she knows her stuff. That's exciting. And I think that's a niche that a lot of people don't focus on. I think we get so used to being around and be around the people that we're around.
Right.
We forget that there are niches, not just niches, but there are areas and things that just get overlooked. I mean, we run into, especially in the real estate world, we see where it's a lot of male speakers.
Right.
Because there's not many female speakers out. there. I mean, there are some, and they get invited to play. I mean, when we do our Note Camp events, I'm always trying to bring female speakers on. You know, I'm like, hey, let's get Christy on. I have no other guys who are doing social media. Nope, let's get Christy on. We want Christy on for that for you. Right. We bring on other women. You know, we bring on stuff because it's important to see that, because I think it's good for both women and men, because it's just a different way of teaching. There's a different voice out there. What do you think of that, Christy?
I definitely agree, because Dana said this earlier in the beginning. She said it doesn't matter how many other people are talking about the same thing that you're talking about, because somebody's going to need to learn it from you.
Yep.
And it's that same type of deal as we worked really hard to make sure that we curated not only great topics and we focused on the content, but also the people that were delivering them. Are they young? Are they in different parts of the world? Are they women in technology? You know, what are they doing? Like, we made sure to focus on that. And I think if more people opened up their eyes a little bit to what they were curating in terms of that they would get a different result. And it's all content creation, right? It's what you're doing. But I can't begin to tell you how many times I've been on stage and I've been the only female sitting on a panel of like 6 dudes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I feel a little out of place, but I'm going to hold my own.
Well, I'm friends with an amazing real estate investor and speaker, Kathy Fettke. She's out of California. She was recently on a cruise ship. 14 people on the panel. She was the only woman.
See, how does that, this is what I don't understand, is how that happens. How do you have like that whole flyer you saw me send over to you, and I was like the WTFing the whole thing, because it literally was an empowering women event and there was 14 dudes speaking and not a single woman. And I'm like, how? Not to say that men can't empower women, because you guys are some of my biggest cheerleaders in everything that I do. But how can you have a conference for women and not have a woman speak?
Well, I think she made a good point, is that this is a capitalist society, so people are making money. So you also got to think about, a lot of times when someone holds a conference, the point of, getting everyone there, getting butts in the seats, having you on stage, having the fantastic music, you come out, hey, everybody, you get everyone pumped up, because you're trying to sell something. You're trying to get education out there. You're trying to, it's either something that they, that you want them to buy while they're there, you know what I mean? Or if they've already purchased it and they're there, I mean, that's a whole different story, right? But I think you do run into this where either one, it's easier just to throw these people on there because, well, I know I can make money off these guys and someone has to pay for all of this. So I'm just going to throw people out there and then we'll get the one token female that, will make us, to where everyone doesn't burn down the place because we have at least one female compared to actually curating and saying, hey, how do we really turn this into a community where it's not just a fly-by-night conference where everyone gets angry. I mean, this is something where people are not just involved on the day that we're there or the weekend that we're there, the week that we're there, but it's something that we continue to grow and we nurture all these people because it's diverse. We're having a diverse set.
If they don't start doing that, they're going to get called out more and more. It's not just about, just women anymore. It's how are you making your events inclusive for everyone? Like, are you really going the extra mile and really make sure you are? I did appreciate Traffic and Conversion because, 2 of their headline speakers were female. And I was like, yes, finally a conference is actually having an equal level of male versus female.
They've always been really good with that. I would say that in the years I've gone, Brian and Perry and Roland have done a really good job. I mean, they've had different keynote speakers. They had Sally Hogshead, who was a major keynote speaker, like a Gary Vaynerchuk or the guy from Bulletproof Coffee they had this last time.
Oh, yeah.
Damon Johns has been a couple times. But I think you run into at big events sometimes, it's the good old boys network. And you look at, especially it depends on what the motion is. If it's to provide education, provide content, or hey, are we trying to fill up our pocketbooks? Stuff like that. And that's not saying women can't sell, because some of the women we've had on our work stuff is sold better than the guys.
Right.
It's just that it comes down to, oh, hey, we'll pick our friends, and that's what happens. They don't take a look at it. Not that they're putting a blind eye to it. Maybe they don't recognize it sometimes.
Right.
But I think it's something that you got to have. If you want a diverse crowd, you got to have a diverse staff that's providing that education or the panels and things like that, diverse speakers.
I think Lauren just made a really good point that it's not very hard anymore to actually find the qualified people that you want to come speak. You have groups like Global Women in Tech that you can go and contribute to, and also tap if you want to have somebody come out and speak. Like the excuse that you can't find anybody qualified is no longer an excuse.
It's a laziness. It's ignorance.
Yeah, it's just like you said. It's the good old boy club. They get to who they know first, and then they try to reach out to bigger known names versus trying to discover the people. Like if we hadn't reached out to some of the communities that we know, we would have never had the opportunity to have Lauren on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a prime example. We're the case study in itself of how we reach out to different communities, and we're looking for great quality content. It's who delivering it behind it is the second part that we're looking for. But I love it.
It's a good point. So let's do this. We've got a little bit of a break before our next speaker on. We got to do a little technical stuff here. So if you guys are watching this live, don't go away. Don't be surprised. You just jump over to a different live stream because we're going to switch it up.